Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Nancy Tandon, who is a children's book author. And Nancy, for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
Hi, Selena. Thank you so much for having me virtually here with you today. I wish we could be in person, but this is fun too. And neither of us had to get on the highway. Um,
It's
for people unfamiliar with my work, I am a middle grade author and I tend to write contemporary novels, meaning set in modern times, nothing fantasy. It's just a straightforward story. And that's kind of where I live. It's where I like to read and it's where I like to write.
okay. And what can readers expect from your newest book?
Thank you for asking. My newest book is The Way I Say It. The Way I Say It is a middle grade novel, like I said, which is perfect audience is grade 4 to 6. Kids anywhere from 8 to 12 and a little bit beyond. It's the story of a 6th grade boy named Rory who can't say R sounds. And he thinks that's his biggest problem until his ex-best friend starts hanging out with the not so nice kids. What happens next, though, is that Brent becomes injured in a bike accident and he sustains a mild traumatic brain injury. And when he returns to school, he joins Rory in the speech room. And the two of them have to figure out a way to negotiate their changing friendship based on this new Brent and move forward with who they are both becoming.
That sounds very interesting. Wow.
Really fun to write.
So what do you think draws readers to this kind of book?
I think especially a story like this is for that student who two different things, and I'm sure you've heard this and all your listeners have too, how a book can be a window or a mirror. And if it's a mirror, really in my heart of hearts, I wrote this as a mirror book for those kids in speech therapy. My previous career was as a speech language pathologist. And a lot of times I worked with kids who couldn't say sounds in their first name. And it was such an interesting and unique problem to have, to be someone who can't, when someone says, "What's your name?" and you can't tell them. That's a very odd situation. So I'm hoping that those kids will see themselves. And I've written, I hope, the character in his speech therapy, it's a fun place to be. The speech therapist is cool. Other kids actually start kind of feeling jealous of this relationship the kid has with the speech therapist. So in that respect, I'm hoping to build up some of those kids. And then as a Windows book, I would love for kids who are really going through that 6th and 7th grade phase when those shifting friendships are so confusing. You're becoming someone new. Your friends are becoming someone new. And these structures that you both relied on for your entire early childhood days start to shift under your feet, just when everything else inside your body is shifting too. So I'm hoping that this would be the kind of book that any kid could reach for and say, "Oh, I might not recognize all this, but I recognize that part." Or I had that particular problem with a friend, and oh, I see what the boys are doing here and how they forgave each other or didn't, and how you move on.
So was that the inspiration? Was your being a speech therapist the inspiration for this book?
Yes, definitely. Right. And Rory, the main character, was actually a side character in the first full-length manuscript, novel-length manuscript I ever wrote that will not become a book because I was learning how to write a novel when I wrote that. But Rory was like a kid across the street in that book. And I thought, what if I gave that kid his own narrative arc, give him the spotlight? And I started writing from his point of view, and it started to work in a much better way than that first story was not working. But yeah,
So
the background in speech pathology, I worked in a major level 1 trauma center in Cleveland, Ohio, and I worked with people who had brain injuries, strokes, And I also worked in the outpatient clinic with what you would consider your more typical speech kids, like a kid who would maybe augmenting their school speech therapy, or a kid who's too young to be in public school yet. I would see those kiddos too. And they just kind of infiltrated my mind and my heart. And it's a wonderful career. And however, I do like writing better than I like that. That was a decision I had to make when I wanted to write for publication. I knew it was going to take a lot of energy and time and effort. And so I made the switch, but I do miss those clinical days, I have to say.
Oh, wow. So what kind of research went into writing the book? I mean, obviously you had a lot of background in speech therapy, but was there any extra research that you had to do?
Yes, there was. And one of the things was I was really nervous about not getting the speech therapy part right. So I was going to like a whole day conference just on the letter R, because it's such a complicated sound. And I wanted to make sure I was remembering it right, what I had learned, and learning as much as I could about how would you remediate this? If this was the last sound left, how would you remediate that sound? And so I did research some of that too. And the other thing I had fun researching was just basically like the policies of modern day sixth grade schools. So I would get on the phone with my friend who was a principal, or my friend who's a para in our sixth grade school here in town, and say, what would the kids be studying this? On the phone with my friend who's a fifth grade and up math teacher, and say, what's a math curriculum you'd be doing in sixth grade, so that it would make sense and be, realistic. And then the deep dive of research happened when, just through happenstance of a neighbor kid being over for dinner, I got the idea of putting Muhammad Ali as sort of a thread in the book. And the two boys, the main character Rory and his buddy Brent, his ex-buddy, get paired together for a biography project on Muhammad Ali. And the speech therapist, Mr. Sims, is obsessed with Muhammad Ali. So it all comes together. And Muhammad Ali is such an interesting person, such an interesting life. And it was the gift that kept on giving. If I needed to hit a theme over the head with something, Ali had a quote for it. If I needed to, take the story in a certain direction, Ali had done something that was going to dovetail nicely. And it was such a pleasure. I watched a ton of documentaries, and I started with reading just kids' books on him. And then when this book sold to Charles Bridge, which is you probably know this, Selena, and many of your listeners will too, it's a educationally leaning publisher. And the editor, Karen Boss, said, she really wanted me to get the details correct, especially when we were talking about when he lost his license to box because of his resistance to the draft in the Vietnam War. She wanted some real specifics. And I thought, okay, I had to go to the big kids section. I had to go to the grown-up section of the library and read some books that way. But that was an unexpected turn for a contemporary realistic middle grade story to be that heavy into the research of somebody else's life was unusual and very fun.
Wow. So what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out your newest book?
I think the biggest challenge, because it is my debut novel, was just believing that I was going to get here, because it's not a foregone conclusion. It's not like anything else I did in life. Like if I was going to get my graduate degree, I took the classes, I passed the classes, and you get your graduate degree. You apply for jobs, you apply for enough of them, you get a job. This was like, you might do this for several years, 5 to 10 years, and this might not get published. So the biggest challenge was just reminding myself that focusing on the fun and the joy of writing was going to be enough. When in my heart of hearts, I really wanted this book to get out in the world where it would meet its audience that I was writing it for. So perseverance and kind of that believing in yourself, especially in the early days, because I knew what I was writing wasn't that great. Like, for example, when I said I wrote a whole other manuscript, I knew what I was writing wasn't great. I could objectively tell, but I couldn't do any better than that. I actually was doing my best, but I had to learn and grow. And I was doing a lot of workshops and any conferences I could get my hands on, and reading a lot of books on craft, and sort of becoming the person I needed to be and the writer I needed to be to write this book. So perseverance is key.
So were there any groups or clubs or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
Yes, definitely. Anyone writing or any interest in writing for children should definitely check out the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators,
Yeah.
SCBWI. You've heard of it. I'm sure many of your
Yes.
interviewees talk about it. It's a wonderful organization. They have really incredible programming. Huge conferences. The New England Conference is one of their best ones, people say. I've only been to the New England one. There's also one in New York. I've been to that one. There's one in LA. I know there's one called Southern Breeze, which I think would be fun to go to sometime. It's in like a warm state in the wintertime. There's chapters all over the country. And it was through SCBWI that I learned things like, how do you format a manuscript to send it? How do you write a query letter? It's such a specific, odd profession where there are just some things you need to know. And SCBWI was the place that I went to find them. And through SCBWI, on their website, you could click, find a critique group near me. And I found out that one was running at the library in my town, and reached out, and I went in with my first, little manuscript pages, which was a little picture book. And hi, I'm Nancy. And everyone was, of course, so kind and welcoming. And that made all the difference. That critique group really, and it was a once a month thing. You're going to show up, you're going to have something to read, or you're going to critique someone else's work, which also makes your work get better. So I have a very, very special place in my heart for that first critique group.
Wonderful. So what character did you love or hate the most in your writing of The Way I Say It?
I absolutely loved writing the speech therapist. He was so fun to write. He's a funny, I would love to know this guy in the real world. He's laid back. He cares a ton about the kids under his care. But he's sort of the cool speech therapist I wish I could have been, but I'm just not that laid back.
I was just thinking you were going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like I could just be an alternate version of myself, male version of myself. It was really fun to write him. And one of the characters that there's a character in the story, Danny, and, just made it, he's the bully. And so it was fun to just make him an awful kid. But then what happened is, as a writer, you have to understand, why is that character behaving that way? So then I had to know Danny's backstory, even if it was parts I didn't put in the book. And then I came to really love Danny and kind of feel bad for him because he has a crappy home life. So even the one that was really hard to write, I ended up enjoying and liking that character.
So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Coming soon. And again, this is not, it took me so long to publish this first book, The Way I Say It, that the joke is, and it's a joke with a great punchline for me, but it took me so long to publish it that in the meantime, I wrote and sold a second novel. And in August 2022, this year, my second middle grade novel will be publishing. It's called The Ghost of Spruce Point. And it is a cozy mystery set on the coast of Maine. The setting is based on this really beautiful peninsula where my parents live, and my kids would summer and have adventures with the cousins. And I really worked hard to capture that magical feeling of that peninsula in the story. I'm excited about that one.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. All right, now I have some questions about being a writer. What's your favorite part of being a writer and on the whole writing and publishing process?
There's so much that I love about it. One of the things is what it means for me in terms of getting a break from reality. I come up to this little alcove you see here behind us in the morning, and I can plug in, and when the writing is going well, it's almost that feeling of when you're watching a movie and you get out of the theater and you're like, oh, it's what time is it? What day is it? And I love that I figured out that I can control that. I can take myself on these little, fantastical journeys just by allowing myself creative time. And the other just absolute joyous part of this writing career for me has been the people I've met. I'm just blown away. I did not expect at this age to be making new friends so rapidly and so easily. There's just something about getting together with other writers, especially kidlit writers, that's it's fun. Sometimes we have deep and emotional conversations. Sometimes kidlit can get pretty dark, and to have these friends who are there and who understand what you're feeling both in your career and the emotions that this writing is bringing up, it's just been a joy. I continue to meet and make these really great friends, and that's one of my favorite parts.
Mm-hmm. And what's been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
That's a really fun question. One of my smaller critique groups, we call ourselves the Red Barn Writers. We have been going up to Maine in the wintertime, maybe for 5 or 6 years now. It's an odd place to go in the winter, but it's a wonderful place to go for a writing retreat. And my parents are snowbirds, so we would kind of take out gypsies in the palace and get a fire going in the wood stove and just write. And it's an adventure because it's Maine in the winter. We've had the power go out. We've had snowstorms. We took a walk in the woods once and we think we saw a bear print and we ran back to the house. So that's been fun. And I really enjoy the idea and the execution of all kinds of writing retreats. Takes you to new places, and that's a fun part of the adventure.
Wow. So what's the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
That time is passing. No matter how you're spending your day, time is passing. So you might as well pick something that you love and spend your days doing that. And that is the attitude, like I was talking about earlier. How do you keep going when you don't know that your goal that you're striving for is actually going to happen? And when I asked myself, if after rejection, I would quit. Multiple times I've quit. And then to get back into it, I would say to myself, well, what else do you want to do? Yeah, I could go. I enjoyed speech therapy very much. I could go back to that. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So that's a wonderful lesson that this journey has taught me, that when you really are truthful with yourself, you will end up doing something that you love.
So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
It's the only advice that I think goes for every single writer, and that is, don't give up. Don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. There might be a story that you can put away. A story might not be working, but you as a writer are not broken just because one thing didn't work or one thing didn't get published. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Never give up. It's in Muhammad Ali, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's that's my best advice.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the advice of a lot of other writers. That's what they keep saying. You get rejected many, many times and just keep going out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's really
painful.
important.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that rejection isn't painful, and it still happens. That was a surprise to me. I thought once you got one book sold, you were kind of like in the club. No, it's story by story, and rejection is very, very painful. And I know that sometimes people have to take a beat and take a moment and kind of have some self-care around that. But always my advice would be just get up and try again.
Mm-hmm. When you get rejected, do you rewrite the story again, or do you just leave it the way it is and send it out the same way?
It sort of depends. I would say the number of rejections that I had for the way I say it are the reason that it's as strong as a book as it is. Because what happened along the way is I went from just getting no thank you rejections that were just like a blanket, what do you call it? Auto reply almost, thank you for considering, no thank you, to getting auto replies with one little line on it. I really liked the setting, or I didn't feel that the mom was believable. Something I could take back to my revision work and play with, okay, this one it's only one reader, but wonder why they said that. Why isn't the mom working for them? And it would give me something juicy to work with in revision. So I can't say I ever went back to the beginning and completely changed, but I got so much great feedback through my rejections. I really appreciated those rejections because it does take, I know that you've probably seen the stories and heard about slush piles, and it's like hundreds of submissions a day. So when someone would take the time to actually give me feedback, even if it was just one sentence, I really appreciated it. And it was all those taken together that kind of helped, me make these corrections that I needed to make. It was like bowling with the bumpers up in the alley, I would hit a bumper, but I'd be sent back into the middle, then over to this bumper and sent back. Finally you've got to get down to where the pins are.
Just out of curiosity, did you send your story to a number of publishers at the same time or one at a time?
I did a combination of, I was sending it to agents, and
Right.
when applicable, or when I had an opportunity, I would send it to editors. So for example, if I went to a conference like the New England SCBWI conference, a lot of times after those conferences, you get a packet of people who'd been there as faculty, editors, agents, and publishers. And you are invited to submit to them for a certain time period, maybe for a month after the conference. So I would go through those lists, and if I saw someone I'd either met at the conference or seen them speak, and I felt like it was a good match, and I was a good match for maybe their publishing house, I would send directly to the editors. So I was doing both at the same time, and I would say never more than, for agents, I would maybe have maximum 5 out at a time, because I might hear back some good juicy rejection advice to change something up, and then I would send it out again. So there was always this revolving door, always this revolving door. I mean, it was a lot. I had a spreadsheet, and it's just covered in red. It was just a lot of no's, and that's part of the process. That's part of the process, because I was learning about the business, and the people who said no to me in the beginning were correct. It was not ready to be published. That's just the facts. Hard to hear, but that was the truth.
Interesting. Okay. So now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I think that most people think that I'm an extrovert, because I love meeting new people. I was saying that before, and I really enjoy like this kind of conversation, or cocktail party type gatherings and conferences. But what's the real truth is that I'm an ambivert. And an ambivert is somebody who can extrovert. They can do it and they enjoy it. But then I need like a long time of rejuvenation and processing. I need like to go and shut the door and be in a dark room. I'll be physically and mentally exhausted after a 2-day conference. It'll take me a week to kind of come back from that. So that was something interesting I had to learn about myself, because it helped me make decisions. In the beginning, I was like, whatever conference or workshop was happening, I was there. But I learned that I was cutting into my writing time because I needed this recovery time. It's a really interesting balance to be an introverted extrovert, an ambivert, if you will.
I've never heard of that, but that's a good way to put it.
I like that phrase.
Yeah. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time for them?
One of my passions, and one thing that is dovetailing nicely to this new career of mine, is basically literacy outreach programs.
Mm.
If it's a literacy outreach program, I am interested. I want to hear about it. I want to be a part of it. I want to help gather the books. I want to do whatever. And right now I'm part of a group called the Micah Children's Initiative. And we are partnered with a school near my town, that's sort of an underfunded school. And I've had such a good time, for example, connecting with there's a brand new kindergarten teacher there, and his shelves were bare because he's brand new. And so we organized a drive and we got to take over these kindergarten level books and boxes of them. And that was so fun. That kind of thing feeds me in a very different way than the writing does. And it does kind of get me out of my own head, and but still keeps me in the literary space. So I really enjoy that. And I would say I enjoy hiking, but what I really like is just sort of walking outside. I don't need to like do a mountain, but I almost every day, no matter the weather, I like to get outside and walk. Having a dog helps with that, because it's a necessary thing. But I really enjoy. I've got some wonderful walking trails near me, and if I'm stuck on a plot point, I'll think, okay, this is a good time to take my walk. And I walk along and I'm thinking, okay, what would happen next? And what would happen next? And what should the character say? And then back to the writing desk when you get home. That's another it's a good pairing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good to think when you're walking. It's always good to write in your mind what's going to happen. I know it's important. And you kind of just answered one of my next questions, because writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions with them to either help or hinder them with their work. And you obviously have a dog. And does your dog help you or hinder you with your work?
She can go both ways depending on her mood too, but she is a funny little dog. She's a rescue dog, and they think they were calling her a dachshund lab mix. So picture this little head and a lab looking little body. And she's funny. She's a nervous dog. She's an anxious dog. And so she likes to be right by me all the time, which is lovely when she's got her own little ancillary bed up here in the writing nook, and she will, chill out and be sleeping. But then sometimes I'm just in the meat of a scene and I'm not ready to take my break and my midday walk, and she will stand right by my knee and whine. And it's for the best, because probably at this point I've been sitting for 3 to 4 hours, and that's not healthy either. Like, you got to get up and move. It's really, you can, I know a lot of writers who run into trouble with lower back pain and stuff because it's a very sedentary lifestyle. So I feel like I'll keep her, since she's probably keeping me healthier than I would be.
So what does your writing space look like? And do you need to have food, any special food or drink with you when you're writing?
I am a coffee morning person. I love that. It's my favorite time to write, with the first cup of coffee. And I have a little, I guess it might be worth it. I'm going to show you there's my window. So I get to look out that window, and then here's I've got a writing inspiration wall behind my monitor. And on that wall, I have a bunch of pictures from Kidlit illustrators. Either I picked up their card at a conference, or some are actual pieces that I've had framed. The color that I painted my wall that I look at is called nacho cheese. It's a Benjamin Moore color, and that pop of orange to me signals wake up, time to write, and it's a good. It works. It works for me. So it's like a little signal to my brain. It's time to work. When I see that, anytime I see like that orange color, it's really interesting. And I love having my books behind me, which are sort of like my friends. And one of the things I'll often do is I'll be stuck on something, and I'll remember, oh wait, in one of Leslie Connor's books, she had a kid, talking to an adult about a topic that was tough. Let me see how she did that. How did she get into that scene? And I'll turn around and pick out her books and look, or whoever else. And I've got all my craft books back there. So if I'm really stuck, I'll think, okay, let's just go read that chapter again on ratcheting up the tension. And sometimes that's what I need to do. You need to do, as writers, you need a lot of input. You can't just always be output. That's too draining. So I do enjoy the input part too.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So when you're writing, do you prefer music or silence?
I'm laughing because I have a funny answer for you. I think it's a fun answer. I prefer silence if I'm really focused. I can do white noise. That's helpful if people are around, because this is a space that's like an open alcove. But when I was writing The Way I Say It, one of the themes in The Way I Say It is music, and heavy metal music in particular, and hard rock. And the reason that's in the book is at the same time I was writing this novel, my son, who's a drummer, had gathered a bunch of friends and started a neighborhood band. And the band would come over for practice at our house, because you always practice at the drummer's house, because the drummer's not going to take his drums down the street. So I would be in my little headspace, and sometimes I have I always have a candle for each manuscript I've written. I have sort of a signature scent. I'll do anything to try to get that creativity to kick in. So I would light my candle, and I'm like getting in the mood, and I'm about to write, and I would just hear heavy metal music. So it just weaved its way into the story. Mr. Sims became obsessed with hard rock. He shared that with Rory. Rory had his own interest in guitar, and our friend down the street, who was my son's friend, who was here as the lead guitarist, her name's Kayla. She would answer so many questions for me about guitar as I was writing the character of Rory, like, how long would it take you, Kayla, to get the calluses on your fingers, and that kind of thing. So it was a joy. There were times that I was, because I was really trying to concentrate, but in the end, just like the dog, like, it was a good thing they were here, because I think it definitely enhanced the story, and it made it a lot of fun, and it got me out of a listening rut, because especially the songs they were playing were very heavy. I dialed it back to hard rock for the book, because when I was revising, I knew I was going to have to listen to these songs over and over, because when that scene would come on and there would be a song, I would play the song and then revise. And sometimes I had chosen the song because the emotion of the song was matching what I wanted the reader to feel when they read the emotion of the scene. So that was helpful to me, to have this music playing in the background. And I knew I could not do like Pantera on repeat. I couldn't do it. But Guns N' Roses, yes, I can do that on repeat all day long. It was really fun. And on my website, I have a link to Rory's playlist, and that is basically the playlist I listen to over and over when revising.
So how important has the New England setting been to your writing?
it's been very, very important for these first two books. The first book, the way I say it, is actually set essentially in the town I'm living in a small suburban New England town. I wanted it to specifically be Connecticut, and that was one of the conversations I had with my editor, who was like, "When you don't have to say Connecticut, it could be anywhere USA." And I thought, oh, well, I don't want it to be anywhere USA. I wanted it to be specific because, to me, where the boys and all the kids in the book live were part of who they were. They're part of how I came up with the characters. They're always picturing them on a bike path in my town. So that was important to me. And there's also some nods to things like the Coast Guard Academy, which is a pride of Connecticut. So that was it was very fun. It's been fun talking to local school kids and saying, I'm going to read you a little section. I want you to tell me where you think this is. I read them. Oh, that's the bike trail behind Smith School. I'm like, you're right. That's been fun. And then, of course, the main setting for The Ghost of Spruce Point. I mean, that's got a ton of those deep-seated Maine New Englander, almost inside jokes, if you will, and that's been great. The third thing I'm working on, interestingly though, is set in the Midwest, which is where I was born and raised. And I don't know why it wanted to be set there, but it did. So I'm gonna have to, nothing like taking a research trip to Southern Ohio. I don't know why I did that. Next book, I'll set it in Paris, so I have to go there.
That's a good idea. You get a trip there, take it off on your taxes. Yeah.
Right. That's you're thinking.
Exactly. So I just have two more questions for you. Where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And this is where I always put a plug in for Annie's, and you can get Nancy's books at Annie's Bookstop of Worcester. You can call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com, and we will be able to get Nancy's books for you. And where else can people get your books?
That was a great fun PSA. I feel like you should have something flashing above you, like call now. Annie's Bookstop, of course, would be a wonderful first stop for you. But any independent bookstore, one of the biggest thrills of this particular novel, being my debut novel, is that it was chosen as an Indies Introduced pick. And to me, that was just like the ultimate love response to how much I love independent bookstores. I can base whole days of vacations around getting to an independent bookstore in a new city for me. Or just going, I love to go downtown and walk into mine, and just talk books with people. There's something so special about independent bookstores and the people who work in them. That book love, that mutual admiration society between writers and booksellers is so fun. So any independent bookstore, please support and stop there first. And after that, you really can get them anywhere books are sold. And if you're not in the market for buying a book right now, I also absolutely thrilled that my book is a library book. And requesting books from a library is something that authors really appreciate. And it allows more people to experience our stories that we wrote for you.
Okay. Next question and last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Hey, thanks for asking that question. My website is my name, www.nancytandon.com. And on Twitter, I'm at Nancy Tandon. So those are the two main places. And in my Twitter bio, there's a link to all different kind of things. And in fact, I will put a link today to Annie's Bookstop in my Twitter bio, so that you can all just easily click. And I love connecting with people. Teacher Twitter and librarian Twitter and book Twitter are very, very fun places to be.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for joining me here.
Thanks, Selena.
And since you're not very far, since you're in Connecticut, hopefully soon we'll be starting to have book signings. And
I'd love to meet you in person. I'd
yeah,
love to come up.
and possibly when your next book comes out, you will have a book signing.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. It was so wonderful chatting with you.
It was great to meet you. All right, we will be seeing you then. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.